Hi and welcome to my kitchen here in Finland. Today I'd like to share with you a very traditional Finnish dish. It's called Purée, which is reindeer stew. It's served with very thinly sliced reindeer meat, traditionally over mashed potatoes with some sugared lingonberries. But we are going to go primal today, and yeah, it's going to be a good time. So let's get started. So why don't we get started by having a little bit closer look at some of our ingredients. Here we have the main ingredient, our reindeer for our reindeer stew. Reindeer is a very tender and lean meat that's similar to other game meats. You could substitute it for another cut of venison if you can't come across reindeer meat, for example. Also, because this is a traditional dish here, which if you go to any good Finnish restaurant would have some sort of reindeer on the menu, you can get this in the grocery stores pre-sliced. It's very thin slice. A lot like a kebab meat, for example. But if you're working with a larger roast, then what you do is you need to freeze your roast, let it defrost ever so slightly so that you could take a sharp knife and cut slices off the end until you get about 750 grams is what we have here. I'll be giving you the imperial and metric for all of these at the end of the video, so no worries about that. We're going to be frying the reindeer meat for a couple of minutes in some organic butter. That's about 100 grams of butter there. And then once we have it fried up, we're going to use about 3 deciliters of water to simmer for about an hour, hour and a half. We're going to be serving our reindeer stew, rather than over the traditional mashed potatoes, we're going to be using Rutabaga. Rutabaga is actually a cross between cabbage and turnip. It's got a slightly sweet flavor. It's an excellent source of vitamin C, potassium, manganese, and fiber. It does have a slightly higher glycemic index, less than carrot nonetheless, but because this isn't the centerpiece of our meal as you would see with the traditional dish, that's not going to be such a big deal, I don't think. We're going to be making thyme cardamom spiced rutabaga puree. And so here I've got about a knob of butter. It's about 2 tablespoons of butter. It's mostly to taste. Ground cardamom and ground fresh thyme, that's dried thyme, and a couple tablespoons of coconut milk to add a little bit of creamy texture. And this is served with lingonberries, also known as cowberries. These lingonberries are a very tart berry. Traditionally, you mix them up with a couple tablespoons of sugar. As you can see here, we're going to be using some organic honey from here in Finland. To taste, once again, if you aren't accustomed to sweeter things, you'll need less honey. Obviously, you can add a little bit more to taste. If you can't get a hold of lingonberries, you can substitute with something like cranberries. This is an excellent addition to this meal as they're fabulous source of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and omega-3s. So we like those. So if there's anything that says Finland, it's Sana, Santa, reindeer, and berries. Berries, 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 berries. So this is the perfect dish. I've already got our butter here in our pan. I've got a large, deep pan since we have such a large amount of meat and we're going to be simmering for a long time. I've got that melting, and I'll go ahead and get our reindeer here to the side. Once the butter melts up, we're going to go ahead and throw that in there. This dish pretty much is very, very flexible. If you've got a little bit more meat, got a little less, it's not a problem. Same goes for our puree. It's kind of all according to how much you want to put on your plate. I've got some definite amounts here of our ingredients, but it's very flexible and it's easy to make if you've got the time. It's not a lot of active work. So got our butter about melted up here, so I'll go ahead and throw in our reindeer meat. And while we've got that heating up, we'll go ahead and I've already got our boiling water for the rutabaga ready to go. Go ahead and turn that down a bit, in fact. I will get our rutabaga sauteing, or steaming here, or boiling, excuse me. So basically, this will depend a lot on how small you've cubed your rutabaga, how long it takes. But you basically want to get it nice and soft like you would with any sort of puree, so it'll be smooth. So we'll leave that there. It does call for salt to taste, this recipe. We do have a toddler eating in our house, so I tend to leave the salt out in cooking and add it only after we've got our food on the table. So we'll go ahead and bring our water around and our spices. And I'll see you back in a few minutes. Hi, so we're back. Our reindeer here has been sauteing in the butter for maybe about 5 minutes. The goal here is not to get it to be completely cooked, as it's going to be simmering for about an hour to hour and a half. Mostly you just want to give the meat a little bit of color, and this is the time that, for example, if you want to throw in some extra bacon or something, excuse me, not extra, but some bacon, that always makes the dish delicious. It's not in the traditional recipe, but hey, we like bacon. So it looks a bit like this. It's browned, but I can still see some red there. Traditionally, it's cooked with water. There are several alternative recipes that call for putting beer. If, for example, beer is a treat of yours and you want to cook with a little bit of beer, you can substitute some or all of the water for beer. But today we're going to be using water. I've got about 3 deciliters here. So I'll go ahead and add that to my reindeer. And that more or less covers the meat. I'm going to go ahead and shift it around and make sure that it is submerged in the water here. And I've got my handy dandy big lid here, and I'm going to go ahead and cover that up. And we're going to want to leave it for on low heat, low medium heat, mostly low, for about the hour, hour and a half, as I mentioned before. It could be done in as little as an hour. It could take a little bit longer. Once again, it's a really easy dish. If you leave it a little bit longer, it's not going to hurt you. If you need to get it on the table a little quicker, you've got a taller breakdown, it's probably going to taste pretty good then as well. So why don't we go ahead and move on to making the lingonberry mash. Okay, so I've taken out a medium-sized bowl. I've got a fork here and our lingonberries and honey. So I'll go ahead and dump those in. And you can leave some whole. It leaves a nice texture. It's good presentation. I'll bring that over here so you can see the lovely color. And I'm basically just going to mash those around a little bit. And the goal here is to get enough juice to make it a little bit more like similar to a puree, but obviously rather chunky with a lot of texture. As I mentioned before, you're going to want to add a little bit of something sweet to taste. If you're a stevia fan, you can do that. Honey, maple syrup, these are all options. Like I said, I've got a little bit of honey here, and my honey happens to be on the thicker side. So I'll go ahead and squeeze a little bit of that there, and we're right on the end of our tube. I'm not going to put too much because this is something that you want to taste every so often and see what is the right balance for you. So this you basically just mash up and mush around until you find a texture that you like. And like I said, you want to leave a few of these berries whole because it really helps with presentation. It's a very beautiful, bright red berry despite the lighting I've got here. Alright, so we'll go ahead and set that aside, and we'll scoop that then onto to the side of our reindeer and our rutabaga puree once we've got that ready, which should be pretty soon. Hi, so we're back. Our reindeer has been simmering. I've put it here on the back burner so I can do the rutabaga puree a little bit easier here on the front. It's been on for about half an hour or so, perhaps 45 minutes, and I have drained our rutabaga and I put it back into the pan here. Before we get started adding the butter and the spices and coconut milk, I'm going to go ahead and mash it up a little bit, and then I'm going to put it in. I'm actually going to use my immersion blender. You could also use a processor, but I find it easier to just keep it here in the same pan. So mash it up a little bit and add in our butter, which by this point is nice and soft and room temperature. And I'll go ahead and knock in, I've got a generous pinch of cardamom there, and I've got a generous pinch of dried thyme. Once again, this is to taste. You can go ahead and put the basic stuff there. Cardamom is a very distinct flavor. It's oftentimes used in sweet buns here. So I do miss my sweet buns from time to time. I enjoy using cardamom in my savory dishes. And we will go ahead and scrape in our coconut milk. This really adds a great creamy texture to your rutabaga puree. And stir this around a bit. Let our butter melt. And probably depending a lot on the size and the age of your rutabaga, they may or may not be a little bit more tender or a little bit tougher. Obviously, you want to have them nice and soft by this point. But if you've got maybe a larger rutabaga that's more fibrous, then you'll want to add a little bit more coconut milk and a little bit more butter to get the consistency that you want and that you like. And I'm going to go ahead and use my handy dandy immersion blender, and it's going to be loud, so we'll be back in just a minute. And we're back, and now I have pureed up our rutabaga, and upon getting it nice and pureed and getting all of the coconut milk and things mixed in, I decided for this batch that I would add another couple generous tablespoons of coconut milk. I add another pinch of cardamom, another pinch of thyme, and then I went ahead and lightly salt and peppered. And as you can see here, it's got something remarkably similar to the texture of good old carb-loaded, glycemic index off the charts mashed potatoes, only this is a lot better for you. It's a lot more flavorful, and it has a slightly sweet flavor without any of the sweeteners necessary. So we're going to go ahead and put the lid on this to keep it nice and warm. Our reindeer has got probably another 20 minutes or so. It should stay nice and warm, and I've just got to show you this. Here is our reindeer pot, and that lid is hot, so I'll go ahead and lift it off with a towel here. Mmm, delicious. So we'll let that continue simmering for a little while, get nice and tender. And there's our puree and our lingonberries. I'll clean up here, and we'll be back when we're ready to put it on the plate. Hi, welcome back. Our reindeer has been stewing for a little over an hour now, and this is how it looks. It's released a lot of fats and delicious nutrients into that broth there. And we've got our rutabaga and our lingonberries. So what's left is, well, frankly, it's the best part. It's to eat. We'll put a little bit of our puree here. As you can see, this amount would probably feed 4 hungry adults just fine. That puree is going to be very flavorful and slightly on the heavier side. So you don't need much. We'll go ahead and generously add our reindeer and get some of that delicious broth there to soak into your puree. And last but not least, we'll go ahead and put a side of our berries. And there you have it, folks. It's savory, it's nutritious, and most importantly, it's primal. So we're going to go ahead and chow down now, and thanks for watching.